The teachers and cops, they try. But what do they know? Have they ever freaked out? Are they locked up like we are? Maybe the kids will listen if you let us tell it, like it is.
Hi, my name is Steve. It's time we took a look at dope from our own level. So here it is, the drug scene, like it is. Now I'm 19. All the other guys you'll hear from are 12 to 16 and a half. They're all drug addicts. My conversations with them were all recorded inside corrective institutions. In other words, all of them were locked up. You're not going to hear from any teachers or politicians or head shrinkers or police. Just kids. I want you to consider me as a reporter, not as a self-appointed advisor. I can't tell you what to do. You have to make your own decisions. Of course, that's what it's all about, making decisions, that is. Most of the kids you'll hear from have gone all the way up to hard stuff and have been busted at least 3 times. We recorded them inside the corrective institutions. The only restriction was that no names be used. I was given a chance to kind of get to know the kids, before we recorded, but nobody put any words into my mouth. I did my best, of course, to keep from putting words into their mouths. I'm grateful to the kids for treating me like what I am, not a square, but just a straight. Their answers to my questions were unrehearsed, and I think honest. So away we go, first to the inside of a girls' correctional facility. With these first 2 girls, I guess we talked for about a half an hour before we opened the microphone, about sports and movies and music, stuff like that. I think they were a little suspicious of me at first, but it wasn't too long before we began to relate. As we switched now to the tape, I'm rapping with these 2 girls, and I've just finished asking one of them to describe how she started getting high.
My first experience with drugs was, there was this friend of mine, and he turned me onto some grass, and we were with a few other people. And I went with the same person to this place, and I took some acid, and that was a confusing, kind of scary trip, but I remember what people said to me not to get scared because that would put you on a bummer. So all I saw was the cars spreading apart and stuff, and it was scary, but it was an experience.
What led to your arrest? How did it evolve, your life with dope?
Well, after that I started on speed. I got scared of that, and then I started with Reds. And my first arrest was on an overdose with Reds, and that scared me away from them. And the second time, I was under the influence, and they arrested me for that.
Under the influence of what?
LSD.
What form were you taking speed? I mean, were you, how did you take it?
Injecting it.
In your arm, in your veins?
Mm-hmm.
Can you recall any specific effects of that as opposed to, say, LSD? Did you hallucinate on that?
Mm-hmm. But it was more of a scary trip than, like, acid was. It wasn't that scary, but speed was, because I blacked out, and I hallucinated good things on acid, but on speed I hallucinated gypsies and witches and stuff.
I see. Well, how was Reds? What was the effect? I mean, describe that. Reds is Seconal. Is that what it is?
And Tuinal too.
It's a common sleeping pill, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was that like? Did you go to sleep?
Yeah.
What happened before you went to sleep? What happens?
You stumble around and take a little sleep here and there and bump your head against the wall.
Do you try to stay awake?
Yeah.
Is that the point of the whole thing, to try to stay awake?
Mm-hmm.
But after you were busted the first time, what happened?
What do you mean?
Like you said, you OD'd Reds.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? Like, the police caught you, and then what'd they do to you?
And I got family counseling and went home. See, I don't see how that helps,
Well, I just want to get everything involved, so just as far as just points on, just experiences, in other words, so kids can hear experiences of what has happened to people. Okay, well, like if you're out again and you're the same age again, knowing what you know now.
The only thing that I would do was smoke grass.
That's all you do is smoke grass?
Because the rest of them, I know that it messed me up, because I still have flashbacks and I have to take tranquilizers.
You still have flashbacks? What do you believe it's from? The flashbacks are from?
Acid.
From acid? How many acid trips did you take?
I don't know. A lot. Twice a week for a year, so.
And how about you? How'd you get started on drugs?
Well, my first experience was one of my girlfriends had turned me onto grass. Then after a while, like I was smoking grass for about 5 or 6 months, you know, and that's all I was doing was smoking grass. And then, you know, I went on to a couple bigger things, like I started taking reds and downers and stuff like that. And it was like, the big thing was to how many you could take and still stay awake. For about 7 months, I was just like smoking hash, smoking opium, and taking downers and acid every once in a while or something like that. And then I started shooting heroin, and I shot heroin for about 5.5 months, and then I got busted.
So you shot heroin for 5.5 months. How did you get it?
Well, my boyfriend had been pushing, so he'd have a lot of money, and he'd buy a large quantity of it. Then we'd sell some of it and make the money back, and then just shoot the rest.
How'd this relate to your boyfriend? Like,
It was just like, it was something we decided to try together, you know. And then we liked it, so we just kept buying it and getting off and stuff.
if you could start over again, at what point would you cut it off, or would you cut it off at the beginning? In other words, your involvement.
I don't know, I don't really see how I'd cut it off. Because, like, if I could think of something better to do, I probably wouldn't have done that to begin with. But, I don't know, I learned so much from it that...
In other words, you learned good things about dope or good things about things in general?
No, about life and stuff. It's like, I wouldn't recommend anybody to go out and get high, but it's like I had learned so much from it.
Is it possible, do you think, to become naturally high? I mean, you know, without drugs?
I could get a good feeling just being out in the country and riding a horse. The same kind of feeling that I could get with acid. If it was the right day and it was green and everything.
Well, I think one of the biggest things, of course, is, you know, the whole question is trying to make it the right day all the time, you know. When you get out, you think what do you think will happen, you know? What does it depend on, if you go back to dope or if you don't go back to dope?
Well, I'm not going to be going back to dope, you know. Like, I learned a lot from it, but I definitely won't go back to it. And, like, now I can see that it was just like a hole that I was in, you know. And even though I had learned a lot from it, you know, if I wouldn't have gotten busted, by now I'd probably be dead. And I know that for a fact, you know, the way I was shooting. Like, every day it was getting to be a point where I was shooting more and more. And I didn't even care. I never even thought about it, that I could kill myself.
You say you know you won't go back now. Why do you think a lot of kids do go back? Like, say, in other words, they get busted and they get completely physically off of it. Do you think it's because they go back to the same friends? Is that, I mean, I don't mean to put words into your mouth, but do you think it's because they go back to the same place and the same friends and the same crummy, just depressed place and feeling or whatever?
No, not necessarily, because I guess some people, if they're weak enough and they go back to their same friends and stuff and they see them getting high, they'd start getting high too. But if you're strong enough to go back to them with the feeling that you could be happy without going to dope, you could just see them getting high and just, like, feel sorry for them, but you don't have to have dope. Like, I still know people that are on hard stuff, but, like, there's a lot of people that I know that are still smoking grass and stuff like that. You know, not a big extreme. Like, if they went to a party and grass was there, they'd smoke it, you know, but they wouldn't go out and buy any of it. It's like, it wouldn't make me want to get high, you know.
On anything?
No.
How about you? What age were you when you started?
11,
I started when I was 14 and a half.
What age are you now?
14.
I'm 16.
About dope in general, do you have a story you'd like to relate or anything like that at all that might be interesting?
I think the only thing that kept me from using heroin was my father, because I think I would have gone to it if it wasn't for him, because he was a heroin addict himself and he got killed from it, so I learned from that. But if it wasn't for him, I would have gone to harder stuff. And I don't recommend dope for anybody.
Do you think you'll go back to any forms of it? I mean, you know, will you smoke or whatever when you get out?
I think it depends on what happens when I get out there. I think if I get around the other people again, I think there's a pretty good chance that maybe I'll go back to smoking grass. Like I said, acid has done me pretty bad, and so has speed, because my mind is kind of gone. It's just scary little things that happen.
Because marijuana appears to be the threshold drug, I asked the same question of the other girl.
Well, it's not like before, grass did lead me to harder stuff, because I wasn't getting that high from grass, so I was going on to things that would get me even higher. But now that I know, that I would get trapped into that, I could probably go out there and just smoke grass without going on to harder drugs, because I know that it could happen again. I have that knowledge.
You say you could smoke grass?
I probably could without, going on to bigger stuff. I'm not sure if I would.
We leave the girls now for a few minutes and visit a correctional institution for boys. There's no such thing as a soundproof room in these facilities. You probably heard the jets passing over us back when I was talking to the girls. Later, one of the girls told me that she bet it was a Jefferson airplane. And you'll hear some more strange sounds probably here, too. I'm talking with a 15-year-old who first smoked pot when he was 11. He's been busted a lot of times for many offenses. This last time for GTA. That's Grand Theft Auto. I just asked him how he let himself get tangled with dope.
Well, when I was in junior high, I was walking, doing to my class, and then I met some friends, and you know how you get to know friends, and you get to hang around with each other. So one time he came up to me, we went to a place, a hippie place, and had all these psychedelic things there. And he came up to me with a bag of grass. And I said, grass. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was grass on the lawnmower. But he told me it was marijuana. And so he got a little pipe and stuck it in there, and then we started smoking it. And I got high.
I asked him if he ever felt the urge to go to stronger stuff.
I was too scared to go up to acid and LSD and stuff like that. I didn't want my mind to be, all messed up, and be dumb and all that.
I then asked him whether, as he continued, to smoke grass, if he needed more of it at a time or less to get high.
See, the first time I took it, it was, I had to take more. Then after a while, you get to take a lot. Then all you need is a little bit, not too much, and you get high.
What he had just told me was what I had heard from others. The longer he smoked grass, the less it took to get him high. You know why? Medical experts say this is because THC, that's the thing that gets you in pot, well, this accumulates in the system. Now, I'm no scientist, and my job is not to draw conclusions, but as long as we're letting these kids say anything good they'd like to say about pot, or anything else, it's only fair to add here that reputable doctors believe that pot interferes with the function of the liver, and that is accumulative, and that it definitely can lead to potentially lethal concentrations of other dangerous stuff in the system, which the liver would otherwise throw off. If you want to check up on me here, well, this comes from Science Magazine, Mr. Warren Kornberg, editor, writing in the LA Times. Okay, but getting back to the fellow I was talking with, well, I said to him, some students I've discussed with tell me that they can study better for a test if they're high on pot.
No, see, they think they do better, but, they do it wrong. So it's better not take marijuana, because, you do it right, and you know what you're doing, but when you're high, you think you're doing it good, but you ain't.
If you had a chance to start all over again, and you could manage never again to get hooked on any drug, would you consider that a better position than you're in, say, now?
I'd be in better position not taking it. Marijuana, it's not that bad, it won't affect your mind, it's just a little trip for a while. But if you take like acid or LSD, so that will affect your mind. But I knew I was gonna be dumb anyway, not taking it. So it doesn't really matter.
How dumb he is or how smart he is, well, that's not for me to say. I make two observations. His IQ is above normal, and his drug experience has been limited solely to pot. But now we go back to the girls' place, as we meet a cute blonde, 16 years old.
One day, I was just over my girlfriend's house, and her brother and a lot of his friends were there. And they were all kind of stumbling around, and, it just looked like fun, So my girlfriend asked me, hey, you want to take some reds? So I didn't know what they were, but she goes, they're really out of sight, it'll get you high. It's like, all right, so I took two, and I really was doing really idiotic things, like driving a car and I didn't know how to drive, and wrecking cars and just things like that. And then after that, I just started smoking weed, like on Friday nights and stuff, and slumber parties and stuff like that. And then that wasn't doing me anything, you know. After a while, weed just got to be you know, it wasn't even anything anymore. And
Well, I don't want you to just, I mean, if this is really true, say it, but, you know, I mean, I don't...
yeah,
Okay.
no, it just really didn't, you know, it just really didn't get me, you know, I just didn't like it anymore. So my girlfriend asked me, you know, you want to take some acid? And I heard acid was pretty good. So I took it, and I really dug it. And truthfully, I still do. I really dig it. I don't take it now, but because I'm locked up, but I dug it, and it gave me kind of like I felt like when I was on it, like there was something about me that other people just had to see. Like, I felt like I was really a beautiful person, and like I could just give out so much love to everyone around, and that, you know, it was just like I was just glowing, you know, and it was really kind of a nice feeling. And then I had a bad trip once. I took acid, and I was drunk at the same time, and I didn't know how many times I had 2 tabs in my pocket, but I had forgot that I already dropped one of them. So I dropped the other one, and I was coming down, up, whatever you want to call it, from being drunk, and next thing I knew, helicopters were attacking me, and I was just kind of flipping out. Just, you know, I really didn't know what was happening, and that, you know, that just kind of stuck with me, and I'm kind of wary of taking acid again, but sometimes it can be really a good feeling.
What had you heard about acid before you took acid the first time?
It's just supposed to be like, you know, you could make anything you want it to be, you know, like you could look at a chair and say, "God, chair, I wish you were a bike," and concentrate hard enough and it would become that. And, you know, I thought this would really be a trip, and, you know, why not try it?
What had you heard from the so-called, like, authorities on it?
Oh, that they had just, you know, when police would come and talk at the schools and stuff, they'd say, "Oh, you'll go insane and you'll end up in an insane asylum and you won't know where you're at or who you are," and all this. I always considered that a lot of bull. You know, I always kind of just laughed at them and said, "Well, I'll believe it when I see it."
What about physical things?
They said that acid would break your chromosomes and you have deformed children and things, but I guess I'm just the type of person who has to see it to believe it.
I asked her if she had any advice to pass along to younger kids who hadn't yet fooled around with drugs.
I feel like I want to, you know, give all I can to kids who are on, you know, are just getting around the stages of where people are going to be turning them on, you know, and stuff. And I just, you know, I can't say don't do it, because, like, I know how when I was their age, I wouldn't listen to anybody, know how. You know, it's just like, well, you want to find out for yourself. You know, it's something like you've got to experience for yourself. And I don't know, it just really, it messed me up. You know, it's gotten me where I am. And it really has just caused a lot of hassles with a lot of people. And I wouldn't suggest it for anybody to even start it.
When you got busted, I mean, how did you feel? And after that, I mean...
When I did get busted and end up in, you know, way down in juvenile hall, it was kind of like, you know, I didn't even know what happened the night before. And I'd wake up and, you know, there I was, locked up. And I started getting, it was really a stupid thing. I mean, I was really dumb when I was doing these things, because, like, I'd come home so loaded that I couldn't even walk. And I knew that my parents would bust me.
What will happen when you get out? What physically will happen, and where will you go?
Well, with myself, I hope that I can go out there and just really make it, and in school and stuff. Like, I'm trying to make a whole new start, but I'm starting to go to a different school as soon as I get out of here, because mostly the circle of friends I had in my other school, there was a lot of dope, and I hope by then I'll be a strong enough person to say no.
Another of the girls first got stoned on pills prescribed by a doctor for a nervous condition. She found out she could get, as she said it, out of sight simply by taking more of the pills than she was supposed to take according to the prescription. When she related this in a group session, one of the other girls asked her,
When you were taking the dope prescribed by the doctor, did you look at it like dope, or did you look at it like medicine from a doctor?
No, I looked at it as dope. Like, I'd go to school, and I changed schools, and I hung around with these friends who'd bring pills to school from their parents' cabinet, and they'd say, hey, want some of this? And I'd always take it, and I'd go, well, look what I have. And they said, nah, that's nothing, and so I kept it, and, like, I knew what it was, and I knew what it was doing to me.
that was the only experience you had?
No. After that, I got busted then for runaway, and after I got out, I dropped some downers. I don't know what they were, but sleeping pills, I guess. But like, I stumbled around and stuff, and then I kept taking just anything I could pick up. Just didn't even have to have a name on it. I'd just take it. And then in February of last year, I smoked some grass for my first time, and I liked it. And then I went on to acid and speed and things like that.
How are you taking speed?
Orally, dropping it.
In like pills?
Mm-hmm.
How does speed, what was it like, just speed?
Well, it's just like I'd lay down and you couldn't sleep, but I'd just lay down and feel myself just floating around, just feeling free.
Did you ever have any bad experiences on speed or acid or whatever?
Well, my girlfriend's mom went away for the weekend in the summer, and we all gathered down at her house, and they had Reds and speed and stuff. So one day I dropped Reds, and I wasn't down off of them, whatever. I took some speed, and then people started really messing with my mind, and I saw people trying to burn me and kill me, and it kept on all night long. I'd sit up, and the refrigerator would play to me music, any kind of music I wanted to hear, and I got up and started cleaning up the house, and I turned on the vacuum cleaner, and it started talking to me, and I'd talk to it, and just all kinds of, it was like everyone was after me, and everything that came out of the vacuum cleaner was against me.
Did you ever take it again after having a bad experience?
Yeah, I took it lots of times after that, because it didn't scare me enough, even though it should have. And like after that, like, I couldn't remember as well things, and it was just like a gap right there when I started trying to think real hard.
I asked them if they had any overall observations that they'd like to make, about their experiences with drugs.
Mm-hmm. Just that there's a pretty bad experience waking up with someone you don't know, and just things like that.
For the most part, I think, well, for myself, that when I was taking drugs, I was mostly running away from myself and from reality and from things that bothered me. And when a person can get to a point where they know where they're at and they know where they stand in life, and I don't know that, I don't know that, so that's partly the reason I take drugs. But if you know where you're at, and I don't know, it's just like, don't run.
Well, I have one more thing to say. My last time I went home for a weekend, and I was just like, I discovered on being on a natural high and just tripping off of life, and that's one thing that may not lead me back to drugs, and I think it's the best thing to do, if you can find it.
Back at the boys' reformatory, we asked a 13-year-old to give us a rundown on how he first became mixed up with drugs when he was not yet 11.
I started out on grass. I used to, go down this lake-like thing and smoke grass all the time. And then, I started hanging around with older people. And then I started going to parties, stuff like that when I was about 12, 11. I used to go to parties and stuff and used to just get all messed up and just not care about nothing. From grass, I went to pills, And after I got done smoking some weed, I used to go out and just walk down the street, you know, and stuff like that. If any people that hear this record, you know, but the first time you ever smoke grass, it kind of burns your chest a little bit. I used to sniff glue too, but that was probably where I first, you know, started doing, but I didn't sniff it that much.
I asked him to describe his situation at home.
Well, I think it was kind of messed up, you know, because my mom and dad was always fighting, and I used to just ignore it until I got a little bit older, and then I used to know what was going on, so I used to just leave.
After he told me about attending school within the institution and how he felt he was learning more because of the individual attention provided there, I asked him if he had any particular advice for kids on the outside.
Yeah, I remember a long time ago that only high school people took it. And then it went down to junior high, and it'd probably be the primary school next. And if you want to take it, you know, you can take it, but I ain't advising you not to. You know, it ain't that good and it ain't that bad. It's just a drug, you know. It'll send you on something that could mess you up and it could not.
I know a few things about this fellow in advance, some things he didn't know I knew. For example, I knew that he had a pretty high IQ. I knew he'd been considered a pretty excellent student before he flipped out. It's just possible that he was putting me on a little when he answered this question, but here's what he said when I asked him about his behavioral pattern.
Yeah, my behavior, you know, my behavior was I was a good little boy, you know, and then I started smoking grass and I went bad. I ain't blaming it on that, but I think that's part of the reason.
Whatever the reason, this kid is spending more time in custody than he's spending under freedom. He's one of 610 kids now locked up in that one institution. In this one area of Southern California, about 10,000 teenagers wind up in similar detention facilities each year. The tax bill for it is over $53 million every year, so you see that even if you keep out of the drug scene altogether, like I have, you and me are going to have to pay for all of this in taxes. That's the drug scene like it is, and it's hurting all of us. Okay, end of editorial. Let's go visit with some more girls. This first one has some pretty interesting observations on hallucinating. She was introduced to narcotics when she was...
About 14 and a half, 15.
How old are you now?
16.
Could you recall and relate your first experience with drugs? Please.
I was in junior high, and a girl just turned me on to some downers. And I took them and I fell asleep during class and I went home and got sick. So I never took any downers again.
What are downers?
Sleeping pills. These were sleeping pills. And I didn't like them. Like, my mom was at work and she came home and I'd been sleeping about 18 hours and I slept for a long, long time. And she told me later that she came in and checked me with a flashlight. She thought I was dead or something. So I just didn't like downers. And then I got into grass. Someone turned me on to some grass. I've never bought any dope. Like, people turned me on to it. And I liked grass. It was nice.
Where were you and what happened when you first smoked grass? And who with? Oh.
A friend from school and at home. My mom was in the other room. She didn't know much. And it was during Easter vacation and there was like some kind of Mardi Gras at one of the schools. And we just came over to my house one night and she pulled out some grass and said, "You want to smoke some?" And I said, yeah. And it was really nice. And I smoked some more and I liked it. And then...
What did it do to you the first time, physically? Did it hurt you at all or what?
No, it was... Like, I didn't know how to smoke it or anything, and neither did this girl, because, you know, she pretended to be a big doper, but I got the hang of it pretty quick. And, like, my head was, you know, it was real heavy, and I was tired. And I couldn't hold my head up, and some other friends came over, and I remember one of them saying, wow, she's on a bummer, because I was just sitting on my bed with my legs crossed and my head in my hands, and I was having a great time. Like, I was hallucinating on it, and you're not supposed to hallucinate on grass, I don't think. And it was really nice, but when it's happened since then, lots of times when I get stoned, I'll just sit there looking at the ground or something with some insane smile on my face, and people will say, wow, she's on a bummer. And you start thinking about it, and it gets into your head, and you like ask yourself, am I on a bummer? Oh no, they think I'm on a bummer, and you try to bring yourself out of a bummer when you're not on one, and it puts you on one, and it's really a drag. An older friend, a guy that I know is pretty old, he turned me on to some acid one day, and I split it with a friend of mine. I didn't even want to take it because I was kind of scared. But I gave her half of it, and I thought, well, God, half a tab, I won't even get off. And I took it, and I went out to buy some cigarettes, and I walked about 2 blocks from my house. And I came back, and I was really mad because nothing was happening. And I was laying on my couch, and all of a sudden the wall started doing funny things. And I was really hallucinating. And I went in and talked to my mom, and we watched TV, and I had a really good time. And that was just like the beginning of last year. And for a few months, I'd take acid and stay home and talk to my mom. And it was just really fun. Like, we got into some really good raps, and I thought I could see myself a lot better. I thought that people could understand what I was saying, because when I talked to my mom, it really made sense. And I remember lots of times, she'd say, what are you going to do tonight? And I'd say something like, oh, I'm going to go buy some Blue Flats or get some of this or some of that. And she'd say, what's that? And I'd say, acid, you know, LSD. And she'd say, oh yeah, well, have a good time, you know, because she didn't think I meant it.
You say you felt you were able to perceive things better and, you know, say things better and people would understand you better. How did it carry over to when you weren't high? Was this only when you were high?
Well, I saw when I was high that I could do it. So, you know, people tell you that you can't control yourself when you're high. So you think, well, if I can do it when I'm high, you know, think of what I can do when I'm straight. And I had a better time when I was straight. Because when you're straight, you don't have to be scared about getting busted for under the influence or anything. And it's really nice because it's a natural high, you know.
Did you develop some kind of a paranoia about getting busted or anything? What were your thoughts about that?
I didn't have any paranoid feelings then. I've got them now. Because, you know, you really want to get high, you know. You go home, like on a weekend, and you really want to get high, but you won't do it. And it's really kind of hypocritical because you know you're going to go out there and get stoned. But you won't do it while you're in a place like this because of the trouble you'll get into for sure. Whereas when you're on the outs, you know, you take your chances. When I get out, if I take dope, which I'm pretty sure I will, I just want to smoke some grass and have a mellow trip or drink, you know, like nothing else, because I never got into anything heavy.
I asked her to describe what her condition was when she managed to kick dope for a while. How did she feel when she put down drugs temporarily?
The feelings are mixed because it was a really messed up time. But as it was getting messed up, something was getting together. It caused lots of problems, and I'm getting over them now.
I asked her to recall the days at school when the teachers offered evidence to show the damage of drugs, and when the police came to show films and charts and stuff.
Well, like the police would come and, you know, just, there'd be all these people who were taking dope sitting in class, and they'd just fool the cops like anything, you know. They ask all these questions like, well, gee, what does a marijuana stick look like, you know? And funny things like that when they were just making the cop look like an idiot. And in the films, people would just sit there and laugh their heads off. Because things like going from smoking a joint every month to being a heroin addict, you know? And they're trying to scare you, but they're making you laugh and get more involved in it.
The obvious question for me to ask at this point was, if the kids are laughing at the sincere efforts of teachers and police officers, how should the truth be told? This girl and all the people around her were messed up because the message never got through to them. How should it be delivered? How would she handle it if it were her responsibility?
I think people should say, if you want, like this happened to me, it could happen to you. And if you have any sense, you won't get into heavy things. And tell them what it's really like, because, you know, things coming on like marijuana makes you violent, and acid drives you out of your mind, and stupid things, you know. They should, I think people would be more scared by the facts than by lies. And I feel that they give you mostly lies. And the real facts they really are scary.
What were you influenced by as far as drugs go? I mean, what were the biggest things that influenced you towards going, towards drugs?
I got in with a girl my age, and the both of us went to older people. And I think I am pretty much influenced by the older people that I'm with.
You think they were really friends of yours?
Mm-hmm. I really do.
You really think they were friends?
I can see now that, like, some of my friends are really hung up on dope. Their life revolves around it. Yet, when you talk to them about it, they can understand what you're saying. And now when I go out and they say, no, you can't get stoned, I know they care.
I then turned to another girl in this group and asked her how she became involved.
God, I was drinking when I was 11 years old. And I didn't get high. The first time I got high, I was almost 14. I was moving down to LA. And it was my going away present. And they turned me out to grass. I don't know. It was nice. It was sad. I mean, it made me feel sad. And when I got down here, I was really lonely because I didn't know anybody. And so those were the first 5 people I met were people who turned on, and it was sort of easy to fall right back in with them. It got to be, I don't know, I'd heard a lot about, I'm from San Francisco, and I guess the drug scene was pretty big out there. I heard a lot about acid and speed and downers. I heard a lot about all that kind of dope, but I don't know, I was too scared to take it when I got down here. My loneliness helped me, I guess, to go ahead and say, you know, who cares? So I turned on the grass for a while, and then I dropped some acid. I really liked acid. I spent the whole summer on acid. And took some Reds. I didn't like downers. Downers, I don't like being depressed. I like being up. I like to party. I don't know. Just being down's not where it's at. And so I got interested in bennies. Bennies were neat. They just made me feel so high, so good. They made me think I could do anything I wanted to. They just made me feel like I was queen, you know. No one could tell me I was nothing. So I didn't care. I started cutting school. I got really involved in the whole drug world. I was selling, and God, everything was dope. My whole world. Started cutting school, and I ran away from home with a girlfriend. Went back up to the city and went up to the Haight. And I moved in with some junkies. They wouldn't let me get off on heroin or nothing, but I met these people who were doing a lot of speed, so I started shooting speed. And became strung out. They told me it wasn't addicting, so I could do as much as I wanted and wouldn't have to worry. But they never tried to put down, so they really, you know, of course it wasn't addicting, they didn't try. It's really, I don't know, I like speed, it was real good, but it's got a lot of bad effects. Rotted my teeth, my hair started falling out, got amphetamine poisoning. Yeah, I became really paranoid. I was the most paranoid person you'd ever seen. Boy, I remember there would be raids in our apartment building, and I used to run down those fire escapes and get sick afterwards because my heart would be going so fast. But I used to go on long runs, didn't want to come down. I was scared to come down. Couldn't turn off the lights to go to sleep. I was too scared what would come out of the dark. I was on the run, and it was really an escape because I couldn't face. I would run away from home. My parents were worried. I didn't want to look at all that because I knew I would go right back home. So the more I could fix, the easier it would be, you know, to stay away from what was happening. It got to the point. It's when you start. It starts to, your friends will turn you on for a while, you know. They'll turn you on for so long. Then it gets to the point where they just can't afford to turn you on. You've got to start hustling for yourself, and you do some bad things. I
I never got down to prostitution, but it was pretty close. We did some pretty rotten things. Things I wouldn't have done clean, straight or anything.
I asked her what she thought her chances were of going straight upon her release back into society.
I don't know. I really don't. Right now, I feel really secure being locked up. It's like there's nothing put in front of me. You go out there and you don't know. The POs want to hear that you're going to go straight, so, you might tell them that. I can't say. I probably will get high again because, on at least grass. In fact, I know I will get high again. It's sort of like an inevitable thing. I want to stay away from hard drugs. But, I think I can do it this time without getting too far involved.
Okay, what do you have to say about natural highs?
They're beautiful. Like, when you can feel that you can get high without dope, well, it still doesn't eliminate the thing that I want to get high with dope. But when you can do it, it's a good feeling. Something else isn't necessary. You can look at life through eyes that say it's beautiful, and you can make it beautiful, even if you have to pretend. If you're in a position where things aren't making you that happy, such as in here, I feel I'm naturally high most of the time, because you can't say, at least I can't keep saying to myself, well, you're busted and you blew it, so be happy about it. Don't keep yourself down, because you got to make it through some way, and it's nice to be naturally high. You're not faking it. I don't know. I think being naturally high is really an out-of-sight thing. There's so many different things that can put you on a naturally high. Like, listening to music, that'll do it. Some people read and that gets them, really high. And, I write. That gets me really, it makes me feel high. I think feeling naturally high, it's not an escape, but it's a feeling of satisfaction in your own head. And it's knowing peace, I don't know, sort of a temporary peace within inside yourself, like there's nothing hassling you, inside or outside. I think more people should try and feel it.
Do you get the feeling, as you listen to these kids, that almost any one of them could make it on natural highs? I kind of do. But now it's time to hear from one of the dudes back at the boys' facility. I asked him to tell us from the beginning.
I started with marijuana. I did school and I was out on the field, and I seen my friend, and he asked me, did I want a cigarette? And did I want to smoke, and I thought he meant cigarettes, so I said yes, And so he pulled out a joint, I asked him what was that, he told me it was marijuana, so I smoked it.
I asked him how long it was before he turned to something stronger.
About a year. No, not a year, about 9 months, Well, I went dead up to the top. I tried acid and heroin at the same time, taking it, dropping it. Well, I was just about to turn 12, and so we were out, sitting around smoking grass, and I just said, and we were all sitting around smoking grass, and, a lot of people were high, and so we had, the cops came in and we got busted. There was 25 of us. And I went to a 24-hour school and I stayed there for a year. Well, almost a year.
I then asked him how old the people at the party were.
11 to 25, and I was the youngest. 11 to 28, excuse me.
Now you were sentenced to the 24-hour school. What went on there?
Well, I ran away from there a couple of times. Well, more than a couple of times. And every time I'd run away, I'd go to my friend's house. And, I'd go and get high there. They'd give me reds and yellows and things,
Do I understand correctly that these older people were turning you on just for their kicks? That it didn't cost you anything?
Well, they just supplied me with them because, I guess they thought I was a cool little kid, and they like to see little kids get high, I guess. Because, everybody would laugh when I do crazy things, And I really thought they were my friends.
But tell me, in supporting your habit, along the way, did you find it necessary to deal ever?
I pushed narcotics. That's what I got busted for this time.
You also said something about smoking pot, or you mentioned to me that smoking pot had produced some rather unusual effects in your weight.
Oh yeah, well, this is when after I smoking it for some time. After I smoked it, it made me want to eat a lot, and I went from a size 24 to a size 36 in pant size.
How do you like that, Weight Watchers? Now, if everything goes well, you figure to be out of here in a few months, right? What then?
I don't know, because I don't know if I'll go back or stay or try. I'm going to try and stay out of them, but I might go back into it. You know, you can never tell.
You can never tell. That seems to be the prevailing answer to the inevitable question, will you go back on drugs when you finish serving time? Certainly something a person should think about long and hard before considering experimenting. But now we head back to where the girls are. As we pick up the conversation, I think I've just asked one of them at what age she began her involvement with dope.
I didn't actually go into taking dope until about when I was 13.
What happened then?
Well, my next door neighbor, she's with her boyfriend, and we were going to her boyfriend's house, and they were smoking weed in the car, and I was really, really scared because I didn't know what to do. And so, I was really afraid to tell her that, I didn't know what to do, but I guess she just sensed it, and so she showed me, and I started out on weed. Then I just went to bigger, better things.
Well, what happened the first time you smoked weed? How did you feel, or what?
I don't know. It's hard to remember. It's like I felt real lightheaded. It was like being dizzy or something. I don't know.
How did you think about yourself?
When I was high, I never thought how I looked, or, I really didn't care.
How long were you on weed, and from there, where did you go and what happened?
Well, then my brother came home, and we started having these parties at my mother's house after my father had left. And my mother used to go out at night, and me and my little brother, we were supposed to be asleep. And my oldest brother was supposed to be watching us, but my brother had these parties, and they started bringing weed over in reds. And so my brother was real, real loaded one night, and he asked me if I wanted to get loaded, so I was real scared. And my little brother had taken a red, and he told me to take one, and I took one. And then I got started on reds. And then I just stayed on reds for, on the weekends I'd get high with my brother. It wasn't during school or anything. And then we moved. My father thought, if he took me to somewhere else where he was living, he thought it was a better environment. But it was sort of like a rich area, and the kids had a lot of money. It seemed like their allowances would go towards narcotics. It was really funny, because my father thought, well, here's a nice rich area, the kids aren't that way. But then I don't know, it's weird. All my friends, at first I didn't think they took dope or anything, but then they did. And so I started getting high with them. And I OD'd on reds, and I landed up in UCLA receiving. I was in there for 3 days, and I went through my windshield of my car. And I came back, and I was supposed to go talk to my PO. And I didn't go because I was scared she was going to put me in the hall. She came to the police station where I was living, and they had the police come over and pick me up. And she put me in the hall. And then after that, I just got released. And for about 6 months, I was really, really paranoid of getting high. And I thought, well, I'm going to make it out there this time. I'm not going to get high. But for that 6-month period, I wasn't, doing really anything at the beginning. But then as time grew on, I just kept saying, well, I won't get caught this time. But finally, I started cutting school, and I started smoking weed again. And then my boyfriend was dealing in acid, and I'd taken a tab of acid because I was on the run then. And my first acid trip, it was really bad because I saw one of my friends get beat up, and these guys had cut his chest open with a crowbar. It was really bad. But when I saw the ambulances, they looked like jewelry boxes with all these little lights on them. And so I had to drive my car. He couldn't drive because he's hallucinating really bad. So I'm driving, all of a sudden colors come pouring down my windshield like somebody just taken buckets of color of paint and just dumped them. But I finally came down. I just want to come down so bad. And I just kept saying to myself, well, it's not really that bad all the time. So I just started taking acid.
What were your thoughts about, like, say, whether it was right or wrong or good or bad or anything, like while you're on it?
I don't know. I really didn't think of what was right or what was wrong. All I knew was that I was having a good time.
How do you think about it now? I mean, do you think the same thing now, or what?
Well, since I've been here, I really had a lot of time to think, because before I really didn't think, and I have, sort of mixed feelings about it. Like, I don't want to get high anymore, but there's all those people out there, telling me to come on and do it. And it's really hard to say no.
A couple 100,000 words in the dictionary, and what the whole business boils down to is 2 words: no and yes, and knowing which one to use. Hi there.
Hi.
At what age were you first involved with drugs?
Oh, I was 12. I don't know. I was 12 when I first started on weed.
Oh, how did it come about? What happened?
Let's see. I was babysitting for my mother's friend. She was about 20, and then she was in the bedroom, I don't know, dressing up to go out. And when I walked in there, they were rolling weed, and I got all scared, She asked me, haven't you ever got high? And I said, no, because I was still playing hopscotch and stuff. And so she got me high, because she asked me did I want to, and I said, oh, I don't know, but I ended up doing it anyway. I felt nice.
So then what happened, after that?
When I went to school, so then I thought it was something, so I started telling my friends. So they said, have you ever dropped any reels? No. So then, they gave me some, I didn't have to buy them. Then I started getting suspended from school, getting kicked out. I don't know. It was bad,
What do they, what do they say to you? I mean, these people. First of all, what did you get kicked out for?
They knew, I said it was liquor, I said, I'm just drunk, And they said, no, you couldn't be. I smell it on your breath, and stuff like that. I said, yeah, it was just liquor, so they just kicked me out for being drunk in school. Finally, I went to jail, I just got kicked out of school. I don't know. Then my mother, she just knew I was taking drugs, so real. One summer in '68, I was 13 then. No. Well, just when I was 13 or 14, I'm 15 now. When I was 13,
how old are you now?
15. When I was 13, 14, I just go to parties loaded and stuff, and be kicked out of school, ditch school. But then one day when I was 14, in the summer, I got my father's truck, I had no driver's license, and I got my father's truck, and I dropped the roller wheels while I was driving his truck, I hit a 68, a Cadillac, I think, I don't know, a 68 Thunderbird in a public bus, and I had my friends in the car. I had my friends in the car, in the truck with me, And they were in there, they were scared, I said, are you guys scared? They said, no, I'm not scared. I said, okay, because I'm driving good, honey. They said, yeah. But, they were really scared, and so, I was just driving along, and then I ran out of gas. I was driving down Broadway, and I ran out of gas, and then I pulled the truck up in the driver's station just in time, and then I started panhandling, while my friends were sitting in the truck, and I started asking people, you got any money, Got put some gas in the truck, and they gave it to me, looked at me real weird, So, but then when I got the gas and I was coming out, that's when I hit the bus, I just kept on going, he's blowing his horn and everything, and I just kept going. So, let's see, and then, then the block, I was about a block from my house, and my friends, they said, Kathy, we'll walk the rest of the way to your house. I said, no, come on. She said, no, I'll walk the rest of the way. I said, you're not scared, are you? No, we're not scared, we just want to walk, As soon as I got home, God, the engine fell off the truck. God, the handle started falling off the door and everything. And then when I got in the house, my mother said, what's wrong with you? She started hollering. And then it made me more scared. She said, what's wrong with you? She started shaking. I said, nothing. It made me more nervous, and then she said, something's wrong with you. And then I said, no, nothing. And then I said, okay, I just drank a can of beer, And then I passed out on the bed, and then the police was there. And they took me down to Central, and I stayed there for 3 weeks. Then Then I got released and I started doing it again. Then I wrecked her car.
Well, what, like you were just taking Reds all the time?
Uh-huh.
How did you, okay, well, what do you think about them in general now? You know, like, what do you have to say about them?
I'm scared of them.
You're scared of Reds now?
Uh-huh.
And what do they do to you? Like, you know, what feelings do you get out of Reds?
I feel good, you know, because seem like no matter what I do, you know, it's still right to me. Like when I was hitting all them cars, you know, to me it wasn't nothing, you know. I'm scared of them.
Okay, well, now that you go out and stuff like that, you know, I mean, what are your thoughts on it as far as, you know, how it relates to everybody else and how it relates to you and all that? I mean, like, what are your thoughts on dope now in general? That's what I'm getting at. Like, you haven't been involved, like, say, with speed or acid and stuff.
I took everything.
You did? Well, what happened
I
then?
never took no acid. I just talked too much. And my friends started firing on me because they said I talked too much.
Started firing on you, that's that. Started hitting you?
Mm-hmm.
It did?
Because I was talking too much.
Oh. Well, I guess what I'm kind of getting at is when I said, you know, how do you see that, you know, dope will affect you like when you get out? What's going to happen with dope in you when you get out?
It's bad, sure. I could have been killed twice behind it.
Well, what about lighter stuff?
Like weed?
Yeah.
I like it. I like it though. I don't know. I don't know, but like, you know, like Dee Dee said, you know, you could take that, you know, and then you get tired and you want to go into something stronger, you know. So I don't know what to say.
Okay, then what is your argument? If we've established that everyone here, or just about everyone here, has an argument against what people say, you know, what people have told you when you were younger about dope. In other words, like, you know, smoke a little marijuana, next thing you're shooting, you know, smack.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what would be your, you know, if you say it, if you agree with it, how, you know, that it can happen, what would it do to the general kid, or what do you have to say to the general, the average kid? I mean, what will you say to him if you're the authority?
If I was authority?
Yeah.
If you haven't, I don't know if you haven't started down, and if you are, try to stop, I guess.
Well, okay, I mean, like, is weed bad then? What do you say about weed, just in general?
It's good to me. It make me feel like I'm on cloud nine.
Okay, well, don't try to say anything that isn't there. That's okay. What do you think about natural highs? Have you ever been on one, or?
I've been on one for 7 months now. It's okay. I like it.
Do you have anything else to say that's, you know, just about it in general? Do you have any funny experiences besides that? That's the best one I've heard.
No, I almost got killed.
Well, yeah, but that's why it's, well, that's not why, but that's part of why it's kind of, you know, interesting and kind of crazy. All I can say is, I'm not going to walk down Broadway after she gets out. Right now, though, we head for Nella School for Boys in Whittier, California, and the story of what happened to change a young fellow's life when he became curious about a man sitting on a curbstone wearing an earring.
The first drug I ever took was marijuana. And I did school, and I was walking down the street, and I saw a guy sitting on a curb, and he had a pierced ear, and he looked interesting, and because I'd never saw a guy with a pierced ear before. So I walked over, and I started talking to him, and I found out that he knew my brother. So, you know, he started talking to me, and he pulled out 2 real thin cigarettes, and I didn't really know what it was, but he told me it was weed. And so he asked me if I wanted to smoke any of it. So I said, yeah. And so he smoked it, but I didn't get high that time. And then later, after school, I decided to run away from home. And so we was hitchhiking over Topanga Canyon. I was about 11 years old. And Spider asked a lady for a cigarette, but she said no. She picked us up while we was hitchhiking. And she says, no, but I have this, and she handed him a joint. So we went to the beach, and we smoked it, and I got high. So we played in the water for a little while, and we hitchhiked down Pacific Coast Highway to Venice. And I slept there. Well, we slept there our first night on the beach, and all we had was just a bedspread, so we weren't very warm. But the next day we met a girl, and I got high again on weed. And so then she went to one of her friends and asked if I could stay there. And so her friend let me stay in her house. And then after about 3 weeks, I got picked up and I went to camp. And I ran away from camp and I went back down and I met this girl who let me stay at her house. And she took me over to a guy named JC's house and we smoked hash. And I experimented with a couple other drugs like, hash, weed, and a little bit of opium. And so, then I got picked up again. And I went back to camp and AWOL'd again. And I stayed with a girl I knew. Then about 3 weeks later, a guy named Crazy Tom copped an ounce of speed and gave a 1/4 ounce to Bill. And Bill asked me if I wanted to shoot speed. So I shot speed for the first time in my life. And this guy who helped Tom, his name was Mac, he was a chemist, and I moved in with him the next day. So there was always speed around the house, and he gave it to me. So I went on a run, and I got hepatitis. And my liver got real swelled up. And so I stopped shooting speed, and I got better. And so then I moved down by the beach with these junkies, and a lady named Marcia, the one who had told me how to get over hepatitis, turned me on to my first fix of heroin. And I got really sick to my stomach, so I didn't shoot it for maybe a month after that. And then I started doing a lot of cottons and things, and I was dropping a lot of acid. And then I got picked up and I got sent here. I didn't do any heroin out of the balloons, but I did a lot of cottons when I was living with the junkies, because they'd all be shooting all the balloons, and all that would be left was a cotton, so I'd shoot that.
He had left school at the age of 12 when he was in the 7th grade. Now he was 14 and he had touched all the bases. I asked him for his honest opinion, on what he thought he would be able to do when he got out. I asked him then if he thought he would be able to fight it, and he replied,
I don't want to fight it.
I asked him if there was anything else in the world outside of dope that would turn him on, and he answered,
women.
Toward the conclusion of our conversation, I said to him, we often hear it claimed and stuff that the use of drugs is rebellion, that the user resorts to narcotics because he feels the world is, it's kind of shortchanged him, and deprived him of things he wants and needs. So I said to him, now suppose you were suddenly become very rich, and could have all the things that money could buy. Would that put down your need for dope, or what?
No, because if I think I was very rich, I'd just buy more drugs.
I have to admit that when I left this particular guy's reformatory, I was pretty discouraged. Maybe I'd have better luck here, at the Las Palmas School for Girls. How did you get turned on?
I was involved with the people when I was 13. I met a guy, and he turned me on to some Reds, and so I started cutting out of football games and going over with him and getting stoned. And then I got busted for Reds a couple of months later, so I quit. And I was looking for something new to replace that, and I got turned on to some weed. And that got kind of old after a while, it just didn't do much. So I was just, where I live, a lot of people just kind of like BS around, about, I've dropped so much. And so I was, doing it too, and I said, yeah, I've dropped acid before. And I hadn't. And I went to this party with one of my friends, and she was my best friend, and I didn't tell her that I hadn't dropped, and I dropped there. And it was the first time, and it was just, I didn't know. Everybody told me it was going to be beautiful, and so I thought it was beautiful. And the only time I'd get bummed out was when I thought that, oh no, I gotta go home, and I can't go home this way because there's about 10,000 of me to go home, and I was like spread out. So I came back the next day to my home and got kind of, and then I just started doing a lot of acid, and then I split for good, and I did even more, and I started, taking anything I could find.
What good experiences did you have on acid that made you want to keep taking it? What was good about it?
I don't know, it was just, I felt really free inside, and I had a bad problem that I was always afraid that my molecules would float off. Part of me would just float off. But it never happened. And I don't know, it just makes you feel like you're beautiful. That, you're a person, and you love everybody, and you love everything, and you can solve everything in the world just by, you just, I don't know, you come up with little sayings all of a sudden.
What about music?
If the music got really weird, why, you'd get kind of weird too. And if you started moving, like there's a lot of places you can go to dance, and you'd start moving around, you'd get really weird, just start floating around.
Did you ever look at yourself in the mirror when you were stoned?
I was ugly. It magnifies everything on your face. You can see each pore and each hair and ooh.
You said you found some good things about it. There must have been a lot of good things about it for you to keep doing it all the time.
Yeah. I don't know, I was looking for like myself, and I couldn't really find myself because I started picking up things from other people.
What happened? Did you find yourself, do you think, or?
No. I ended up just a mess. I was spaced, and I was having flashbacks all the time. I'd just be walking along, and I'd start hearing people call me, and I didn't know what was going on. So I just, I wanted to quit, but then even when I got busted, I still want to do it because I like the feeling, but it just really messed my head up too bad.
So how much longer do you have in here?
I'm hoping for 2 months. I'm expecting 3 months.
How long have you been in now?
4 months.
Well, what happens when you get out? Independent of when it is, what happens then? What will happen then?
I'll go home. I've seen a lot of my friends now, and a lot of them are just really tore down. They sound like dead. They haven't got any like up and down in their voice. And some of them they're like a cartoon moving around. I say that I won't go back because I don't want that to be me. But yet I still, there's still the want to get high.
Do you get the feeling I've had as we talk with these kids that maybe the problem is as much emotional addiction as it is, physical addiction?
Yeah, well, okay, let's test that out. Ronnie, why did you start sticking a needle in your arm?
Why? Well, I started smoking pot when I was about 15. One, because I just saw a whole bunch of kids doing it, and I didn't want to be uncool. I really didn't. I thought I wouldn't be accepted. So I just said...
Now, I wonder where that acceptance, or the idea of you have to be accepted, comes from.
I didn't want to walk by myself down the street, and I never thought I'd be accepted unless I did what everybody else did.
You mean like all the other kids were doing it?
Yeah, all the other kids were doing it, on my corner. The kids that I thought were cool. Because I had read in a lot of newspapers, about LSD and all, and about pot, and I wanted to try it too. Because it was very interesting to me. You do this, you go to California because you make $100 dealing. I thought it was something beautiful. I thought it was something that would, enlighten me, make me see the world better. That's what I thought.
Where did you get that idea from? I don't understand that.
Well, I had read a lot of magazines. I was a very, good reader at the time. And I was always interested in drugs or anything that was a little bit different. Anything that was out of the ordinary, because I thought I was going to be a writer. This is my rationale for it.
You mean in the magazine said you should smoke pot?
Well, it didn't say it, but it kind of implied it. When I read it and it said, yeah, well, he went here and he went to Europe and Tangier. And I thought it was pretty glamorous doing all these things and having long hair, being able to buy earrings when you felt like it, because all you had to do was just sit down and deal drugs. I didn't realize the rest of the stuff. Like even though
You know, the charges were there, like you may go to jail for 5 years. I didn't really think very much of it because I didn't really care about that.
How'd you get into art?
I don't know, I guess I was the type of person that it didn't matter what the gang was doing, you know, I would do it. You know, so I guess it's to say that if the thing would have been at that time jumping off of bridges, instead of being a drug addict, you know, I would have been a bridge addict. You know, that's kind of how I felt about myself, and that I had to be accepted in a gang, you know, at any cost, man. This meant that if I was standing on a corner and something went down, that I felt so bad about myself that I sort of had to be a part of it. In any way, shape, or form, you know, I had to kind of go along with it. Because I couldn't let anybody know, you know, that I was pretty afraid. You know, that I was pretty afraid to show the guys that, you know, I feared going down to the, you know, the neighborhood center, fighting. You know, so what I do, I just go ahead. And the drugs kind of gave me the false security or the false hope, you know, that I could make it.
All right, now, but look, the both of you have said that you wanted to do, you know, what everybody else did. How come? Why did you want to do what everybody else did? I mean, we're supposed to be taught like you're supposed to be different, you're supposed to be individual, so on. How come you wanted to do what everybody else did?
Because I felt so unique, I think, that I didn't like this feeling of being different than everybody else. I was someplace burying my head in a book, and everybody else was doing the same thing. And every place I went, I felt different, as though my feelings were unique, as though I was different. Someplace I needed to be part of something.
Well, what about your family? Weren't you part of your family?
That's a tough question. No, I didn't do anything in my family. I was a lazy bum. You know, I really didn't do much. And at one point I hated my mother. Like when I was 14, I asked my mother to sit down and talk to me. And she said, yeah, later. So I went and swallowed 8 aspirins, you know? And like it was crazy because I didn't really want to die, but I wanted some attention. I didn't really feel part there because every time my mother would get mad at me, I'd go storming out the door, you know, kind of take a walk around the block, go down to the creek and look at the water.
Yeah,
You know, the creek.
yeah, right, the creek. The kind of attention you get, though, is like, well, here's $3, you know,
Yeah.
or here's $2, or here's $5. You know, why don't you go see a show or something?
I went to a few psychiatrists, you know, when I told my mother I was messed up. You know, she handed me $25,000. Here's a nice psychiatrist. Sit down and talk.
Yeah, talk.
You mean
to him.
like?
Yeah, and I told the psychiatrist to go, you know where, and I walked. You know, because all I did was run.
Yeah,
My
well, I'm on the
games.
receiving end of that all the time. You know, it's like, you know, he's my son if everything's all right. But if anything goes wrong, Doc, you take care of it. You know, you talk to him, you set him straight, and then you send him back to me. It's like, you know, defective goods that I should repair.
Well, you know, my psychiatrist used to tell me, he used to go, well, I can't help you, you know, the problem at home. He used to tell me about time and a whole bunch of other nonsense I never understood. Then when I was 2 years old, I was dropped on the head, that type of thing. You know?
That was why you used drugs.
Yeah. You know, I said, okay, now I know that I'm schizophrenic, I'm neurotic, so now I can continue using drugs, you know, because that's what I thought I was.
You know, it somehow avoids my ability to understand how people look all over for answers.
Oh.
You know, they look all over the place for answers. They don't even stop to think, gee, you know, why don't I just ask the kid what's happening? You know, why don't I sit down and say, hey, how come you're doing this? You know what I mean? They want to send them to a psychiatrist, and where did we go wrong, and it's a traumatic thing. Why don't they just ask them?
That's too simple. You know, it's like when I was a resident, they used to bring in the patients, and then the neurosurgeon used to see him, and if they moved all 4 extremities, he used to say to me, okay, now you talk to him, you know, because we don't talk to people.
I used to try to mess up my psychiatrist by coming late, you know. I'd say, ha, this is because I don't like you. You know, and I try to do everything to make him go batty, because I just didn't like the idea of coming 1 hour, once a week, and this is the time to relate. Now you talk about your problems. My problems went on 24 hours a day, you know, and that 1 hour didn't do much.
Well, in my family, I was very much a part of my family. I had 6 sisters, and I was the only boy. You know, so the attention I got, and usually it was, well, baby, everything's gonna be fine. You know, you still have a long way to go. And I used to act out and do all sorts of crazy things. Now my mother would say, well, you're the only boy, you know, you got a certain responsibility, but yet and still she would contribute to just about everything that was going on, man. And I used to see her, you know, popping pills, man. She had her pills lined up on the dresser, 3 and 4, in a spot. And then she found out I was popping pills. And, she hit the rooftop, man. She was blowing up, man. Where did I get this idea from? Where did this thing come from?
You must have got it from those friends of yours.
That's right.
My mother did the same thing. My mother, was taking diet pills for a period of about 2 years. And she'd come, in the morning she'd line up 6 different pills, one for that. I took her pills one time. I was higher than a kite. I don't know how she did it. And, if she didn't take her pills, at home, she'd come home about 5 o'clock in the evening from work, turn on the TV set, and eat her Indian nuts. That's all she'd do.
Well, now, look, there's something funny, though. Now, like you're saying that you didn't get enough attention from your family, and so you used drugs, and you're saying that you got too much attention from your family and you used drugs.
Well, that's not true. I got a lot of attention, in the sense that I had a wardrobe that was unbelievable at one point, and I went to camp and I went to private school. Every time I threw a tantrum, I got my way.
I think attention's a poor choice of words.
Yeah.
I think that, not attention, but, well, I know what I was looking for was a recognition that that I was worth something. That if I said, hey, I need to talk to somebody, that someone felt that it was important enough. So I think there's more recognition as a person.
Are you saying, Ronnie, that you're kind of bought off by
Yeah, I
your
got
family?
the attention in the sense that I got money and got a bigger allowance than anybody else did in my family, but I didn't get the attention of sitting down and being talked to on a person-to-person level.
Ain't that the classic thing? But what did I do wrong? I gave him everything.
My mother listen to this. My mother still doesn't believe she did anything wrong. She calls up, or I speak to her now that I've been in the house a while. She still doesn't believe I'm a dope fiend, that I was one. She says it was a guy next to me.
It couldn't happen.
No, it couldn't happen to my nice little Jewish girl, that went to private school and all and played tennis.
Yeah, because we went to all the right schools and so on and so forth, so it couldn't happen.
Yeah, how could they be messed up?
Usually if my attention was, if I did something, it was similar to Ronnie's. Usually instead of, saying, hey, knock that crap off, it was usually condoning it. And it was covered up in, all sorts of ways, Like I say, hey, I want a car. Then I lived in a pretty middle-class neighborhood. So, my people, being black, they sort of had to keep up with the Joneses. So the kid down the street got a car when he was 18. So my mother felt as though, they would talk about us, if I didn't get it. So what happened, I got it. I really didn't care about it because I knew the reasons why I got it. But, she could never see that. All she would say is, well, I'm going to give you everything that I didn't have, all the things that I was deprived.
But what was wrong with that, Horace? What was wrong with that? I mean, here's a mother trying to do something for a kid. What's wrong with that?
Well, during that time, I would have been just as happy, with a birthday card. Something that would have been from her. Something that would say, hey, we love you, and not because of, X, X, and X. Something that was sort of came from her.
You mean she didn't give you the car for you, she gave it because of the neighbors?
Because the neighbor's kid had got a car, this is the reason why I got it.
Yeah, and if somebody else had happened to be her son, they would have got a car too.
Sure.
And it didn't have anything to do with you.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing about it, is, you said that, and I said, well, same thing happened to me. Getting things. And then when you ask that question, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think the important factor in there is deserving. In other words, people, it seems to me, I'm a person, I guess people are like that. Everybody I know is like that. That when they get something, they have to be able to feel that they, earned it. That they have the right to have gotten that. Now, I was given all of the things, but nobody ever demanded of me that I do things, take out the garbage, do something to earn that.
Now, you wouldn't go so far as to suggest that parents not give their kids things if they don't deserve it. I mean, wow, that's a new concept.
Yeah, that's great. How can you feel at all good about yourself? If people just constantly give you things, it's like the welfare system. A person comes in, they need help, the welfare worker does all this stuff for them. The welfare worker goes home and says, boy, I feel great. Look at what I did for so-and-so. So-and-so who came in there can't go home and say, I feel great, look what I did for myself. Yeah. They can't say they did anything. Not one thing. And the same thing applies in a family structure. People have to feel that they deserve it. They have the right to get that thing.
Does that sound,
Yeah, I never felt as though I deserved anything, because I didn't in reality. My mother used to ask me to throw out the trash. I go, yeah, lady. You know, later. And later the trash would be piled up twice as high. You know, I never did anything.
why didn't your mother or your family want to make demands on you?
I'm still trying to find that out. I have to challenge her on that. Why? I guess she was lazy too. It meant exerting herself.
I got
Part of it.
Part of an answer, or what I think might be an answer, is I know in my family situation, and it seems to be not unusual in families today, where mommy and daddy are staying together more for the fact that they have children than they really want to stay together. So that what happens is you get kids playing one against the other. Now, mommy is not getting, good feelings and stuff from daddy. She's already got one person pushed aside from her. So then what happens is that both parents have something to gain by not making enemies of the kid, because they've got enough, they come home and it's tense between the two of them, the mother and father. They don't want the house to be a totally tense thing.
Yeah, well, I think there's another thing too. Like I know in my family, nobody ever really made too many demands on me. And I think one of the reasons is, what happens to a kid when you make demands on him? He grows up.
He may not love you too.
He may not love you, and he'll grow up and he'll leave you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I believe that my mother wanted exactly as I grew up, except for the fact without shooting dope. I don't think my mother's that stupid, but I think she planned almost to have me dependent, because I was her only daughter, like Horace. I had 3 brothers, and the idea was for her only daughter to support her later on in life, that she was supposed to come live with her only daughter, who was supposed to be good to her. When I moved out of my house and I lived with my sister-in-law, my mother used to call up on the telephone and say, what a good daughter you are. You're away from me, and here I am all alone because I didn't have a father. And I used to get messed up. I used to wind up running upstairs crying, and I didn't know who to cry to. I used to just be by myself, crying until somebody acknowledged me.
Usually in my family, I didn't see my father that often. He'd come home every now and then. And I'd see him. Usually he'd be drunk or something. He'd come in, he'd probably slap my mother a lot of times. Then they'd get into a whole big thing. I used to see all of this. Then when it came time when I did something, I guess my mother felt a little guilty, man. Maybe the ways that they were acting out. And then when I'd come home with a problem, she really couldn't tell me anything, because kind of she was sort of, in a way doing a lot of the things, man, that she was telling me not to do. All the things that she was telling me not to do, she would, sort of contribute to it and do it, man.
Doing the same things is right, because my mother was using drugs. No matter how you look at it, even though it was a prescription. She was using, I don't even think it was a prescription. I think she went to the doctor, and there was a tape recorder, one of those type of, doctors.
Well, you remember what we were talking about before? I said that commercial. So here's these 2 guys at work, and one says, "Hey, how come you're so calm, George?" And George says, "Well, when I get up in the morning and I'm shaving, I'm listening to the radio, I hear about the Middle East tensions and the race riots, and I get pretty upset about it. But then I take 2 of these here pills that'll calm me down." He says, "I don't take them every day, so it's trying to say I'm not an addict." So then the guy says, "Oh yeah, does it really work?" He says, "Sure, I take a couple of these here pills, and these are the words he uses. He says, and then it just doesn't seem to bother me as much." And he says, "Oh yeah, really, does it work? I'm going to try that." The end of the commercial. Now people will listen. They'll sit and listen to a commercial like this. Their kids are hearing it. Everybody's hearing it. It's saying, use drugs if you get uptight about what's going on in the world.
It's okay to escape.
Right.
That's the way to do it.
Just go, run.
Yeah, but then what'll happen is nobody will make a big stink about that. Nobody will say anything about that. But you get some kid who's getting pressures because of things like this, smoke some pot, and they'll lock him up for 3 years, ruin his life, his career, everything. They'll say something about that. Or even if his hair is long, they'll say something. But
what's
nothing
so bad
about their peer group.
What's so bad about threatening them or locking them up? How do people come to the house?
How do they come to the house?
Yeah, what's their motive to come to the house?
Yeah, but think about it. Why does it have to get to that point? How is it allowed to get to that point where the kid has to be threatened with jail? That's a pretty bad scene.
You mean like something ought to be done before then?
Yeah, right.
All right, what would you suggest?
Well, the biggest difficulty is getting people to think about what they're doing, to think about what's going on, to say something. If you have a community meeting about anything, just call a community meeting in any community anywhere about anything. If you get 40 people to turn out for that meeting, and it could be a very serious thing going on in the community, if you get 40 people, you're lucky. Nobody wants to exert themselves. They just do not. They think that going to work is doing their thing. They don't think that they can separate themselves from the community they live in. Or if my kid's not doing it, you know what I mean? It's not my problem.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, like the community, nobody exerting themselves. Yesterday I went to court with somebody from the house, and I walked into the courtroom, and I saw all the policemen on one side, and I saw all the black people on the other side, and in the middle a few mixtures. I said, my God, are they going up in war? You know, what's going to happen here?
We're going to have a fight.
Yeah, that's what, and everybody's sitting there just, you know, kind of slouched down in the chair, you know, listening to the judge, nodding out, falling asleep or whatnot. But nobody really saw what was going on, and I got uptight.
All right, but, what could be done in the family, like in your family, Horace? What could have been done to stop you from doing what you were doing?
I think if it had been a lot more communication, a lot more sitting down and saying, hey, this is the thing to do. This is the way to go about it, and really talk about it. Not from a parent, or a kid to parent thing, but really sitting down and really talking about it. And also, like, in my family...
Do you think talking would have gotten it for you?
Let me
Do you think you would have changed from, because I was told a lot of things, Now, listen, Ronnie, you shouldn't use drugs because you may wind up a big, horrible dope fiend in Needle Park or someplace like that, slouched over, weighing 99 pounds. That's not what happened to me.
Right, but
so
you know what I think
okay.
would work? You know what I think would work, though? Two of the people that are in community groups have a Sunday family meeting. And it's an encounter. They sit down.
What, the whole family?
Yeah, the whole family. And the kids say, hey, how come you did this and that? And they confront each other. The kids feel free enough to say to their parents, hey, you were wrong. The parents are willing that if they were wrong to admit, yeah, I was wrong. There's a trust building there.
Yeah, but the thing is, like if you just talk, and then I think what everybody's saying is, if you do something different, if you say, yeah, it's bad, yeah, I did that and it was wrong, and then you continue right on doing it, no good. You've got to do what you say you're going to do.
Also, the thing with, just talking doesn't get it. It has to be something taken away almost at times. I couldn't have been handed all those things doing what I was doing.
Yeah, like my mother used to say to me all the time, gee, you're a spoiled kid. We're going to discipline you in some way. And I used to say, oh, don't do that. And it was never done. It was never done, So the talking didn't do much good because I knew that, if I just said, don't do that, it wouldn't happen, and I could get away with it all.
My mother used to say she's going to light a candle for me and disown me. I was dead. This is when I went away every time.
Usually around those times, like the things that I got, I really should have got a good kick in the pants, but instead I got, hey, well, all right, everything will be all right. And also something else, not only talking about it, but, you sort of need something to look up to. These are the things that I want to be. So I think it needs a lot more people in commanding roles. A lot more people that say, hey, I want to be like him. Not like the other guy, not like this, not like that, but I know my old man is straight, and I want to be like him. Not only does he tell me some dynamite things, but he does them.
Yeah, I looked at my mother, and she weighed 200 pounds, and her hair was never set. Even though she took a bath, she used to scratch to death where she had, blood pouring down her legs sometimes, and she used drugs, and all the rest of this stuff. And, this is my role model.
Well, and like, you say your father was not around because he was drunk and so on. My father was not around because he was a physician. And it's, it's the same thing. It's just as bad.
But I can't blame it on my mother. It sounds as though I'm blaming it all on my mother, and I can't do that, because I did it. I was the only one who meant to deal with it that way. Like what I said before about it wasn't my mother who used drugs, who forced me to use it was me. I did it to myself. Even though I saw all these things around me that were wrong, I chose not to deal with it and maybe change some of it. Instead, I try to manipulate my way out of it. If I saw something messed up in school, You know, I just wouldn't go to school. I didn't like it because I didn't like what they were teaching me, how they were doing it. I used to bad rap the system. I used to tell them how horrible it was. And so I didn't go. Instead of staying there and maybe getting something together with a few of the kids and doing something, you know, I instead went out and got high.
Wasn't that what you saw was wrong? You perceived it right, you saw it right, but that didn't mean you had to do what you did.
Yeah, that's, you know, I didn't feel it was right. Because I wasn't getting a lot of things that I knew I should have been. There was something missing from the way people were teaching me, I felt. You know, I don't think I was that unaware of it.
No, I think when I was 12 years old and started using drugs, I knew, or I could see then, a lot of the stuff that I see now. Maybe I couldn't explain it as good then, but I saw it, that all these things are wrong. But instead of being smart enough to say, hey, well, all right, look at what these people are doing, and look at what it's done for them. You know, it hasn't done anything for them, but made them kind of miserable. You know, what am I going to go out and do that for? So that the difference between then and now is that I still see the same things, only try to do something about it, instead of use it as a reason to do the things that I want to do that are wrong.
I think I even knew that because my girlfriend and I remember talking about, well, even a bum has some purpose in this world. You can say that, you know, don't be like him. But I still chose not to, you know, to change it. I chose to be like him. If he was doing it, why not me? Because I wanted to get high. You know, it made me feel good because I felt pretty bad.
You know, I had the biggest, or let's say the best cop out, being black. You know, really, like if I went to get a job or something, you know, I didn't have to look at, you know, a lot of things about myself. You know, if I went to get a job and I went to get it with a white guy, and if he got it, you know, then maybe on some levels he got it because he was white. You know, but then I didn't have to look at all my inadequacies, or maybe I couldn't do the job. You know, I could very easily say, well, hey, he got it because he was white. You know, and I use that cop-out, you know, a whole lot, man.
Well, you know, it's the same thing with being Jewish. You can do the same thing with that. Ronnie knows.
Well, not even being Jewish all the time, because I lived in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn is mostly Jewish, so I didn't feel that as much. Just being a woman, I felt a lot of the things that Horace felt. You know, saying, well, you know, a woman can't get ahead, there's no such thing as equality. You know, and I can't do what a man could do. You know, they're going to make me sit down a certain way, make me wear certain clothes. You know, I'm going to cop out too, because I want to be just as aggressive as Horace is, and I want to do the same things. That's what I feel I'm capable of.
Seems like you worked through that.
I did now.
So, like, if I can't do what I want to do, the only solution is to
I was
shoot
supposed
dope.
to be a weak, dependent creature, and I wasn't that way, you know. And everybody wanted me to come, you know, walking up to them going, oh, could you help me? And I used to walk around with books, you know, 10 feet high, piling them up, because I didn't like guys to help me. You know, I wanted to do it myself.
Yeah.
And yet when it came to getting a job, it was a little bit different.
Well, you know what's very disturbing, though, that I remember still exists, is that there seems to be a whole selling short, you know, a whole bunch of people selling themselves short. You'll get a guy, an average citizen, lives in a community, he'll walk by a corner, and he'll see a bunch of kids from that neighborhood. They might be drunk, they might be high on goofballs, they might be doing something, but he can see that something is wrong. And he'll say, well, what can I do about it? I can't do anything about that. So now here's this guy, he's got to walk around feeling that he can't do anything about that. And he's got to feel bad about it, I'm sure. So that what happens then is what's happening in what's going on is people trying and find other ways to make themselves feel better. A Cadillac, you know, like I said before, why do you shoot dope? It's better than Cadillacs.
My sister and my brother, you know, they got a $50,000 house now. You know, she bought a mink stove, she got her diamond ring. You know, and my brother feels better. He said he raised himself above, you know, his product, his home. You know, he came out of that and stepped into the suburbia. You know, where he walks down in the morning, picks up the newspaper, and starts reading away while his wife is sitting there.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that the values or the way of life that, let's say, my parents at least, were taught to be the way to do it, you know, my generation, we're not buying it, just not buying it, because it's so obviously full of holes. And so then there's the lack of understanding. The kid says, well, how can you buy that stuff? But, you know, Mommy and Daddy were brought up to believe that's the way you do it. And then Mommy and Daddy say, but what do you mean that's not the right way? Of course this is the right way. You're doing it the wrong way. And nobody wants to sit down and say, hey, you know, what the hell are both of us doing? What's this all about?
Yeah, it's like they're saying, you know, there are two ways to do things, my way and the wrong way.
Yeah,
Most way to do it, you know, my way.
Exactly.
Let's face it, man. Like, success is money. You know, whatever happened to just being, you know, people, man. You know, because if you sit down and talk, you know, usually when I sit down with my parents, the times that I did, you know, maybe we were discussing a drug problem, it would usually end up with a lot of the social things that were going on around. It would usually end up me talking about a lot of the things that I've seen. You know, we used to get in a lot of discussion about pot and liquor and doing it and being very involved in it. I had to think of all the rationales. I had to know of all the rationales in order for me to, you know, well, how do you say, compensate for all the things that I was doing. But now I've kind of learned that, you know, it was a lot of difference. It was a lot of different in motivations. You know, not even looking at, you know, the physical aspect of it. You know, like smoking pot, man, let's face it. You know, you suffer a social thing, man. You know, because you can sort of drink liquor and not suffer anything socially. But smoking pot, man, you know, like I was putting myself in a position, you know, to suffer a lot of consequences, man.
Yeah, right.
That's a shame that that's true, though. That's a shame that, you know, this is this crazy set of standards. It says, you know, this chemical's good, this chemical's bad. You know, and what they're saying is the kids are running away, they're escaping reality. And the truth of the matter is that there's a whole trend, like we were talking about, of using chemicals to run away.
Or externals, any external,
Yeah, I don't think people ought to smoke pot. I don't think it ought to be legalized because, you know, who the hell needs another way for people to get around facing what's going on?
They already have money. When you said values, my belly did a flip. There's only one value, money.
So, you know, like the problem for the kids is to find out a way to make it in their own way, not necessarily the way their parents made it. And a problem for the parents is to let them make it in their own way, but not necessarily to let them make it in a bad way, like by using drugs or something like that.
Well, how did you do? Did you make it in your own way? Didn't you change some of the things that your father was showing you? How'd you do that?
I don't think I really did, in a way, because I think what I did was I kind of, in a sense, copped out by becoming like my father, a physician too, you see. And that was really the path of least resistance. Now, my brother, on the other hand, didn't take that path and suffered a lot of grief because of it, but eventually arrived at something, and I think I did too. But I, you know, I took a way out of it, which was perhaps for me the easiest way out.
Yeah. Well, you know what, we mentioned, kids spend a lot of time in school. They spend the whole day in school. And there was a teacher that I had in junior high school that I liked him. I really liked him. He was a young guy. He seemed to me to have a willingness to talk about things that I didn't find anywhere else. And I would talk to him, and I was beginning to build a trust in him as a friend, because that's what I was looking for anyway. And one day I did something crazy in the classroom, and he called me outside the classroom. And he said, let me see your hands. I thought he was losing his mind. I showed him my hands, and he said, look. He said, you don't have any calluses on your hands. He said, if you don't do good in this school, you're going to be a ditch digger. You're going to have calluses on your hands. You're going to be one of them people. And at that point, what ran through my mind is, what do you mean one of them people? I could imagine if there wasn't one of them people out there laying pipes so that he'd have a toilet, what he'd then think of one of them people. But his standard of people was measured by the amount of money that they made. And at that point, I said, boy, this guy's got nothing going for himself. Nothing. He's just as shallow. He's just as insensitive. He's just as messed up as everybody else. He thinks that, you know, he looks in your back pocket and sees how fat your wallet is. And that decides whether or not you're a good person. Young people ain't buying it. Well, one of the things, you know, too, is that I don't know if I would like to be. I think being a parent today is a rather unenviable position.
What do you mean?
Well, simply because let's take like my parents, right? They could sit down and map out the same beefs that I have with them that they had with their parents, so that they were not taught either. And they were probably inadequate then when it was time for them to be parents. So how could they deal with me? And you've got a funny situation now where we can go all the way to the moon and overcoming all of the problems involved in going from here to the moon, but they can't overcome the problems of people in their country who don't have enough food to eat.
Appalachia.
Yeah, and it's very confusing. You've got a young person today who's got to think about all of the advances and the threat of war, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, but getting to the moon, that's a nuts and bolts problem. That's fairly easy to solve. It's when you're talking to people who have feelings and you're dealing with, the feelings of parents about their kids and the feelings of kids about their parents. That's been a difficult thing from the beginning of time.
Sure.
And that's a lot tougher to deal with than, putting the right screws together to get to the moon. That's simple.
Well, they see, I know at least my parents, there was no flexibility taught to them. Flexibility that would, allow them to change, to think a different way at some time, as the world changed. And the young people today who are running around saying, well, you're drinking, I'm going to smoke pot, are in for a big shock when their kid comes to them and says, well, you're smoking pot, I want to shoot heroin.
Right.
Right.
It's the same, that kind of thinking is going to keep the negative things that is meant when it's said the establishment. It's just going to be another establishment. Only their details will be a little different.
Well, it's a whole different thing for us. Like, most of our parents grew up at a time when things were real bad, like the Depression. Yeah. I've heard my father talk again and again about the Depression. And my father's father was an immigrant who came to this country with no money at all. And it isn't really too surprising that, coming through experiences like that, the big thing should be, man, you got to be sure that you're safe, you got enough money, and when you're old, you're not going to be abandoned. And I can understand that. At the same time, things are different now, and we didn't grow up in that experience, and, young kids want something different. And they should be allowed to get it. And I think that's where a lot of the trouble is.
Yeah, the thing that I was taught that only the strong survives. Meaning whether or not you would had to, scrape bait or whatever you had to do, man. The thing was to get it. It really didn't matter what the means was or how you had to go and get it.
Or
that
who you
means if you had
stepped on.
to step on 10 people to get $1, then you step on 10 people. And this is what I heard constantly. Only the strong survives.
Yeah, what I was thinking of when you were talking, Bobby, about, what was passed down. Because my mother was told that she was to marry money. That was her goal in life, and the only reason she's living is to marry money. So she married my father, and she found out the poor guy didn't have that much. And she became a frustrated old lady. And he passed it down to me, that I was to marry a nice young doctor. This is what I was to marry. Anything outside of a doctor, you should only marry a doctor. That was what it was like. And my mother said, if I don't marry money, and I happened to fall in love with a guy that didn't have much money. He wasn't a millionaire.
In fact, he was a dope fiend.
And my mother, wow, said my daughter's, I finally showed her that I needed help, really. She said, this is it. You're not living up to my standards,
Yeah, well, I think that it's important, because you said before about, this stereotype drug addict monster.
Right.
I think a lot of parents will avoid, they'll deny that their kid's using drugs, in spite of seeing some signs that say that the kid is, because of having to accept then what they've been told about this monster. And instead of being able to look at it and say, well, hey, my kid is using some drugs. Something is seriously wrong. Not something that can't ever be righted, but something is seriously wrong, and I've got to find out what it is, and I've got to do something about it. They'll deny it and deny it and deny it.
Well, they do worse than that. 99% of the parents who come to my office with their kids are giving their kids money to buy dope with.
That's my mother.
And
so they shouldn't steal.
Right. Well, there are a lot of
I got
reasons,
my allowance went up.
That's the usual thing. Or so they, I'd rather have him do it that way than get hit in the head when he steals or something like that. But you know, one of the things that becomes very clear, like, you know, I remember the first day that my wife let my little girl go outside by herself. And I remember how I felt when I realized that, you know, my God, my little girl, you know, somebody might run over her, somebody might hit her, she might fall down, and so on and so forth. And I really went through a whole thing. And then I said, well, you know, I mean, really, there does have to come a time when she's going to have to go out of the house without daddy or mommy, you know, watching over her. Now, I think, you know, when you talk to these parents who are giving their kids money for drugs, what you find out is that does something. That helps that parent. What does it help the parent? Helps the parent to keep the kid at home and dependent on them. They don't want the kid, just like I didn't want my kid to grow up. Really, I don't, because I'll miss her when she's gone. But, you know, that's a way of doing it in a way. Maybe they don't realize it, but that's a way of doing it without actually saying you're doing it, you know. And, you know, I've seen dozens of, you know, 20, 22, 30-year-old kids, really. They have to stay at home because they're on drugs, and they can't get off the drugs. And part of the reason for that is that they're being supported in their habits by their parents.
My mother used to see the pipes, you know, in my drawers in the rolling paper and throw it out. That's all she'd do. Or she'd leave it on my bed. You know, and then she'd see me come home, you know, and I was dressed okay. I looked fairly healthy. I did okay in school. I mean, my marks weren't that bad. I wasn't being thrown out of school. So she never wanted to look at the fact that I was a drug addict, that I was a dope fiend. You know, I told you she still doesn't accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I guess it goes back to, like, really not being informed, or really not going through the changes of being informed and giving a lot of, you know, off-the-top answers. Because I remember one incident that it was pretty important to me, that all the kids in my neighborhood were wearing black shoes, and I wanted to put white polish around the soles of my shoes. So instead of, you know, it was little, but instead of talking about it, my mother's answer was that it's going to wear your soles out quicker if you put white shoe polish around your soles. Then I hear so many parents say, look, if you take this, your leg is going to fall off. You know, something's going to happen to you. Your eye's going to fall out. Right. You know, the kid uses drugs, and then he wakes up in the morning, his leg is still there. And, you know, his arms and everything is still intact.
Didn't fall.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of baloney where the boogeyman's going to come and get you at night.
That's right.
You know, and you wake up and the boogeyman didn't come and get you. What Horace is saying is so true. You know, that all these fairy tale stories everybody tells you, and you find out they're not true. So why should you listen to the stories about drug abuse?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, why should I? I used to go, what the heck, it doesn't happen. Yeah. You know, but what did happen? There's a whole lot that did happen. You know, I almost went to jail. A few times I stood up against a car, you know, being searched, and I was just lucky. You know, maybe because I am a girl and they couldn't find it too good, but, you know, I was pretty lucky. And I could have been dead. That's just where it's at.
Well, I think that's what I know I was asking for, and that's what a lot of young people are asking for, is a more honest relationship. You know, just simply that, a more honest relationship, one of give and take. And that instead of a parent having to say, you have to do this, like you said before, not demand respect, command respect by your very behavior. And I think that it's time too that you know, kids got to start taking a look at things and saying, hey, it can't all be their fault. Mm-hmm. What's my part in it?
Right. My part was that I did it.
There's another thing, too. You know, parents, I think, sometimes don't want to say, I don't know the answers. That's a mistake. You say, I don't know, but let's you and I find out. Like, let's go together and look for the answer. And that can do more for the relationship than anything I know of.
Let's sit and talk as two people, not child and parent or anything like that.